Okay.
Welcome to the conversation. My name is Carrie Ann, and I will be your host in this first segment of the show. I have with me today Sarah, our resident newbie. I promise you will love her as much as we do. I also have Mike, our rocket specialist, and a Dutta behind us producing the show, and maybe teaching somebody else as well. Now, today in news, Sarah, what do we have?
Clever words about Gaia.
And Bridenstine is officially the new NASA administrator.
Oh my goodness. And later on, we do have a Jared who's going to be conducting an interview with one absolute space girl, Holly Griffith. And of course, we take a look back at your questions and comments from last week's show in our third segment, but this is tomorrow, Orbit 11.17.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Now, I want to make sure that I give a huge thank you to our Escape Velocity citizens. These are the people who have given us $10 or more for each episode on Patreon, or $30 a month on each month, I guess, on makersupport.com. They, of course, get their name in the show. And honestly, if I read all of these things, it's going to take me about 26 seconds, even though I speak very quickly. They also get worldwide shipping in our Tomorrow Swag store, and honestly, so very much more. If you are interested in becoming a citizen of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. Oh boy, I bet you missed me. I know I missed you guys, so I'm very happy to be back. I'm actually not even on my Apple box because Miss Sarah here is of a reasonable height and size. So, but we first want to make sure, on top of that,
I'm a hologram. My height is adjustable.
Yeah, which is fantastic. It's so good. It's sort of like dimming or turning up the brightness. We had some launches since last I was on in this last week. So, Mike, tell me what's been going on. What have I missed?
Well, the first launch that happened over this past week is actually a really cool one. This was a Sentinel launch, which was a Earth observation satellite, which launched on a Russian Rockot launch.
I love the Rockot launch because it looks like rockets.
It's a rocket named Rockot.
Right, exactly. That's like one of my favorite things. So when did this launch go on?
So this launch occurred on Wednesday, which was April 25th at 17:57 Coordinated Universal Time, and launched from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in northeast Russia. So, excuse me. Let's check out the footage of that. Yeah. As I said, the payload was the Sentinel-3B spacecraft, which is the 7th satellite in the Copernicus Earth Observations Fleet, which is a network of environmental observations satellites that are funded by the European Union in partnership with the European Space Agency. Now, the Rockot's lower 2 stages were taken from Russia's stockpile of decommissioned ICBMs, specifically the UR-100N, also known as the RS-18, or more famously known as the SS-19 Stiletto ballistic missile. And it was originally built to carry nuclear warheads, although the missile stages were repurposed for satellite launches, and also included a Breeze KM upper stage, which does not include one of those donut-shaped drop tanks like they have on Proton flights. And with that Breeze upper stage, that completes the Rockot satellite booster. Now, the Breeze KM upper stage burned for more than 9 minutes to reach a preliminary elliptical parking orbit, and then reignited around 1912 Coordinated Universal Time for about 30 seconds to circularize its orbit at an altitude of approximately 800 kilometers. And the satellite itself, the Sentinel-3B satellite, which is built by Thales Alenia Space, deployed from the Breeze KM stage soon after the rocket's second firing. And engineers received telemetry from the spacecraft shortly thereafter. Now, the Copernicus fleet is intended to provide data on the planet's oceans, land surfaces, and atmosphere with really unprecedented rapidity to scientists, policymakers, businesses, security officials, and the public. And all of that data is released to the public for free. So that's a really cool program,
yeah.
although Never mind. I was about to bring up the whole Brexit thing, but we can talk about it another day.
Oh, yeah, that's a much longer conversation, I think.
Yeah. I really like this particular rocket, though. We don't see these launches very often, so that was really cool to see. And also high definition footage, since ESA was involved with that. So
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Always the higher def footage is always just way more fun, I think, in general. But there was another launch that I know was kind of going on. I don't even know if we have any footage of this one in particular, given that it's a Chinese launch. So why don't you go ahead and tell me more about that?
Thankfully, we were able to get some footage of this. And I think the reason is because it was launching some commercial satellites for a Chinese aerospace company. So that's probably why there was just ever so slightly more coverage than usual. And this launch of 5 satellites occurred on Thursday, which was April 26th. So I think that we should have the footage of that. Let's check it out. Now, as I said, this was the launch of a Long March 11 booster, and the launch occurred at 4:42 Coordinated Universal Time from the Jiquan Launch Center in northwestern China's Gobi Desert. So there's some cool BFI footage there. But in any case, the 5 satellites were for Zhuhai Orbital Aerospace, and the constellation of satellites are known as Zhuhai 1. And the 5 commercial remote sensing satellites are going to survey natural resources, cities, crops and forests, and other environmental features. And they aim to deploy about 34 video, hyperspectral, and radar imaging craft over the next few years. Now, the satellite itself, or rather the rocket, is a solid-fueled 4-stage rocket. And after the launch, the U.S. military released orbital tracking data that indicated that they were launched into an orbit around 500 kilometers above Earth, inclined about 97 degrees to the equator. So that was a really cool launch. It was the 4th launch ever of the Long March 11 rocket and the 12th launch overall for China for this year.
Nice.
Nice. Very cool to see that and get just a tiny little bit more footage than they've been publishing so far this year. No kidding.
It's funny. Now, I know it's really early in the morning over in Australia, but Mini Stoge said, for a second, I thought that was real footage. I did too. I was like, man, they got a drone really, that's really stable up there. But oh, goodness. That's just kind of what happens. Now, you mentioned, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because I don't know if you happen to know this, but you mentioned that this is the 4th flight for the Long March 11 and the 12th space launch from China for this year. How are they keeping up with other launch providers around the world this year so far? Do you know?
Well, China as a whole is pretty much surpassing everyone this year except for SpaceX, which even though I guess you could count that they have they're pretty much neck and neck because SpaceX has done what, 10 launches so far this year. So I might be incorrect on that because it seems like so many have happened. But
right,
man, compared to all the other companies, including international, including Ariane Space and International Launch Services, China is definitely kicking, or rather beating everyone else in number of launches so far this year. But with SpaceX and United Launch Alliance combined, yeah, the United States is still barely leading. So
nice.
We keep that up.
Yeah, no kidding, right? All right, awesome. I know we kind of like to have a little bit of a count going, and I, like I said, I know I put you on the spot, but maybe a little bit later on in the year we can start to have a maybe not necessarily roundtable, but an update, if you will, about how all the different launch providers are doing. I think that would be fun.
Absolutely.
Right. All right. So now we are transitioning to news, and we have a Miss Sarah.
Hello.
And this is my favorite part because your first story on your first show.
Oh yes. It totally suits me, so.
This is perfect.
All right, I'm gonna try to adult through this.
No,
I'm gonna fail so bad.
I'm just gonna say that. So, Sarah, the way that we got you, the way that we found you, was through one Jared Head.
Yes.
And those of you who know Jared, we should not be even remotely surprised that this might be Sarah's first story. So, Sarah, I will just go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay. So, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he has said that if you're over the age of 8, you must pronounce the name of the 7th planet, Uranus. And if you want to be really pompous, Uranus.
Ooh, Uranus.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
But for this story, it is totally Uranus.
Uranus. Come on.
So, we have confirmed Uranus smells like farts.
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah.
All right. So,
What do we mean by that?
okay, using the NIFS instrument, which stands for Near Infrared Integral Field Spectrometer.
Of course it does.
Of course it does. On the Gemini telescope on Mauna Kea. The Gemini is a twin telescope, one in Hawaii, one in Chile. They used the Hawaii telescope, and the original instrument was designed, or initially, the instrument was intended to study the explosive environments around black holes.
All right.
Apropos, they turned it on Uranus,
Aha.
and they found another explosive environment where
what you
it's
did there.
full of hydrogen sulfide,
Nice.
which is the compound that makes human farts smell like rotten eggs.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
That's awesome, though.
it is.
Like, that's good to know. Like,
It is, and the better we can pin down the composition of the gas giants, their atmospheres, the better we can model early solar system and the formation of the planets, and figure out the differentiation as the planetary disk was coalescing into planets.
see, now, when I think of Uranus, I don't necessarily think of it as being a gas giant. Is that classified as a gas giant planet?
It is at
Yeah.
the moment. There are when you start doing the exoplanets, they break them down into mini Neptunes and
Right.
super Uranuses and.
I like how everything's
Okay.
based off of our galaxy because, that's really what
Right?
matters.
It is
that's
our
it.
system, and we are the most
Still
important.
very solar.
Obviously. Yeah, right.
Did we move past the heliocentrism? But
No, that's really fascinating, though. So other than it smells like farts, is there anything else that this can tell us per se? Yep. I mean, that's just where we are right now.
well, it does tell us that Uranus and Neptune have significantly different compositions, at least in the upper atmosphere, from Jupiter and Saturn,
Interesting.
which does imply banding in the planetary disk.
Oh, okay. So that Jupiter and Saturn are more alike than Uranus
Yes.
and Neptune, but Uranus and Neptune are more alike to each other. Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Cool. Nice. I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there?
Oh,
was
no,
there more?
that was it.
Awesome. Perfect. Look, we all learned something today, you guys.
Yay!
Mike, did you have any questions? I definitely want
I don't think so, although I'm going to insist that I continue to pronounce it Uranus. So,
Uranus.
Oh, all right.
Well, Mike is our pronunciation guide, so
Gotcha.
to be fair, yeah.
I'm just being a snob about that one in particular. All the rest are just.
Well, now that we're done with the
To
story, it can
laugh
stop
at me.
being Uranus.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, Mr. Mike, on a slightly more serious note, because I know that's a little bit more how you go, we have a new sworn-in NASA administrator. What's going on over there?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. After a really long battle, the representative from Oklahoma, Jim Bridenstine, resigned on Monday, April 23rd, and was sworn in as the new NASA administrator. He was sworn in as the 13th administrator by Vice President Mike Pence, and who is also the chairman of the recently revitalized National Space Council. And wow, what an event this has finally been to get up to this. I mean, joining the ceremony were Kellyanne Conway, Ted Cruz, and also the new NASA Chief Financial Officer from Arizona, Jeff DeWitt. And with Bridenstine, he was elected first as to represent Oklahoma's first congressional district in 2012, and he also served on the House Armed Service Committee, as well as the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And he is the first politician to be named NASA administrator, despite his lack of professional space experience and technical education, which has prompted a lot of criticism from Democrats. He's also been criticized for having really strong opinions questioning humans' contributions to climate change, which has put him at odds with a lot of different NASA scientists. However, he was nominated by President Trump to lead the space agency last September and was finally confirmed by one single vote on Thursday, April 19th. And his confirmation was definitely one of the most contentious in NASA's history. But Bridenstine takes over from NASA from outgoing acting administrator Robert Lightfoot, who had a really awesome career as an engineer and manager at NASA, who ran the civilian space agency after the previous administrator, former shuttle commander Charles Bolden, retired in the wake of the presidential election. Bridenstine himself is a former Navy U.S. pilot, and he majored in economics, psychology, and business at Rice University, and also holds an MBA from Cornell University. Now, during his Navy career, he accumulated about 1,900 hours flying time in 333 carrier landings, flying E-2C Hawkeye turboprops and later F-18 Hornets before leaving active duty to serve as the executive director at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. So with all that different experience, hopefully he will be able to bring some of the things that he's learned to the new job. And after Bridenstine was sworn in, the two, Bridenstine and Pence, took a few moments to chat with 3 American astronauts that are currently aboard the International Space Station, who sent along their hearty congratulations to the new administrator. So that was actually pretty cool to see that and some of the things that they talked about. But in any case, Bridenstine thanked many of the folks at NASA who have helped and will continue to help him specifically prepare for his new role and to carry out the space policies that have been presented under the Trump administration and the National Space Council, to which they talked about a lot in his swearing in, to send human astronauts back to the surface of the moon and eventually send humans to Mars. So hopefully, as the administration has new leadership, things will be able to progress forward, and this will be a smooth transition, hopefully.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really cool. I mean, it's just, regardless of how anybody, I see a lot of different comments going on in the chat room. I am neither here nor there on any of those comments, just FYI. But regardless of how you feel about it, at least there's some momentum. There's some forward movement.
And I will say this is just my own personal opinion, but regardless of his qualifications and the things that he has said about climate change, he is a true believer in space flight and, is really passionate about NASA and NASA's goals and about space flight in general. So that's one thing that I will give him. And so he will at least bring enthusiasm to this new job. That's my hope.
Totally. And sometimes you can solve big problems with fresh eyes, which I think is really nice. So there's that. So these are the clever words about Gaia.
Yes.
Right?
We'll see. You can gauge how clever. But
so tell me about Gaia. Tell me, what is it? Where is it? What's going on? All the things.
Okay, all the things.
Yes.
Gaia is the European Space Agency space telescope. It's located at the second Lagrange point, which is on the opposite side of Earth from the sun. So it's orbiting the sun just on the outside of Earth. And it started science in 2014. Its launch was in 2013. But the big reason we've got it in the news today is it's given us its second data launch, or DR2, data release 2. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing it now. This is...
It's pretty.
I know. Oh, my goodness. So this is a high-resolution compilation of 1.7 billion stars.
That was billion with a B?
With a B.
All right,
yeah.
Good.
So this is its second data release.
Nice.
And all right, so this data is 22 months worth of charting the entire sky. What you're seeing is a hammer projection of color and position. We've got, let's see. Sorry about that.
No, totally fine.
All right, so there we go. That's the Lagrange point.
Perfect.
So Gaia is out there past Earth at L2, so it's about 1.5 million miles past the Earth away from the sun. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this position allows it to take a full sky image, and there's Gaia itself. This allows Gaia to take a full sky image every couple months. And so that way what it's doing is it's mapping position and both apparent and true motion of the stars. And now what you're seeing there is a density map.
Oh,
so
okay.
those are just individual points representing stars. So it doesn't represent the brightness of the stars themselves. It shows you where the stars are laid out. So that bright streak across the center, that is the disk of the Milky Way. And then the two brighter objects down below, those are large and small Magellanics. But a really cool thing that's only visible in this image is if you look directly at the center of the core of the galaxy and look below, there's a spike of brightness.
Yes.
All right, that one is, that is the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy.
Oh.
Yes, so it's a small galaxy that's being ripped apart by the Milky Way as we speak.
It's because it's too small. So are we absorbing that, or are we just breaking it apart?
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, I know I'm asking questions that are not in your notes. I apologize.
That's all right. We are ripping it apart.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Aw, a little tear for Sagittarius Galaxy there.
That's okay. It's just joining the big dog.
All right, that works. Don't let me interrupt. Keep going.
All right. So this video is an image of parallax. So the way parallax is important because it allows us to measure the distance to the closest stars by using the way those closer stars move apparent to the distant background stars.
Okay.
And so that using trigonometry, we can take the amount of motion observed in those closer stars compared to those background stars, and we can figure out that distance using Earth's orbit as our baseline.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. And then, let's see, this is the comparison. So on the left, you have TGAS, that is Gaia's first data release.
Okay.
And TGAS, that stands for, let me check my super high-tech piece of paper. All right, that stands for Tycho Gaia Astrometric Solution.
Okay.
All right, that is 1.4 million stars.
Okay, perfect.
Compared to the image on the right, the DR2, that is 97 million stars.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yes, and because, Gaia has done such amazing work.
Yeah, look at that.
These are 14,000 asteroids in our solar system that Gaia has mapped so far.
That's really, really cool.
Oh my gosh. So it's doing such amazing work. So they are actually thinking of extending the mission. Its original mission was going to run through 2019. They're thinking of extending it for another year into 2020.
Gotcha. And this is an ESA project,
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Nice. European Space Agency, just in case anyone's wondering out there. Awesome. That's really fascinating. So we're going to continue to get, I keep calling them data dumps in my head, data releases from Gaia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Possibly through 2020?
Yeah, so far they've done every 2 years, so we'll see.
And so we're mapping the stars. We're just trying to figure out where they all are. Like, what's the original basis, I suppose?
The original basis was to get a full sky survey. Gaia's original name, it's called GAIA because it was going to be a global astrometric interferometer for astrophysics.
Aha!
They dropped the interferometer and went with a straight-up optical telescope so that they could map dimmer stars.
Okay.
Get a more accurate picture of what's around us.
Sure.
But it is mapping stars. It's taking color, red and blue, information so that we can determine spectral class.
Gotcha.
So we can identify how big they are, where they are, and how old they are.
Flavor.
Nice.
Yeah.
What flavor they are? Maybe
I like the strawberry stars.
What they smell like soon. That's fascinating. That's really, really cool. And and thank you to Detta really quickly for making sure that Gaia was our second story from Sarah, so we did not have to end on farts, even though I'm going to mention it anyway. In any case, so that was our news segment. What we're going to do right now is move into a little bit of a calendar break. And if you follow any of us on Twitter, there's a fascinating video that somebody found with the same music. And I can confirm that is exactly what happens during our commercial break. But we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, Jared will be having a fascinating interview with the one, the only, the absolute space girl, Miss Holly Griffith. So stay with us. More tomorrow coming right up.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Hello and welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into today's interview, I first got to give a huge shout out to our Escape Velocity citizens. These folks, of course, give us $10 or more per episode on Patreon or $30 a month or more on makersupport.com. But wait, there's more. That's right. There's a lot of you who actually support this show. And these are our orbital citizens. They get $5. They give us $5 or more per episode on Patreon or $15 a a month on Maker Support. And they get some cool stuff. They get their name in the show twice. Like, that's odd. I'm only getting my name in the show once today, and I'm on the show. They get access to our exclusive citizens-only hangouts. They get early access to After Dark. They can view the show rundown so they can see us put the funny things like...
Technically twice. You're going to be in the third segment.
Oh yeah, that's. Oh no, I'm only going to get labeled once today though, so that's the problem. I can only circle the Sharpie once. Yeah, don't forget your Sharpie when you circle your name. They also get voting rights on upcoming roundtable discussions. So if you would like to help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. All right, that's enough of that. So we are going to get into what is going to be an absolutely fun interview today. I am so excited to be talking to Holly Griffith, the absolute space girl. There is so much to talk about with you today. So we're really glad to have you here at Station 204. Thank you. And where should we begin, I guess? Should we like go back in the day to when you were like just a little girl? Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about sort of how you got interested in spaceflight.
So it was something I've always wanted to do. My dad was always very interested in science and science fiction and astronomy. We had a telescope when I was younger. And so we watched Star Trek, the original series. We would watch Star Wars. And so Princess Leia was a very inspirational figure to me. And so I kind of wanted to be her. And so I was like, well, what can I do to go in space? And I was like, well, there's this thing. It's called NASA. I was like, all right, so I'll do that. And so as I was growing up, I thought about different careers that would let me do that. And so engineering seemed like the closest thing. So I started looking at different types. Yeah, there's me.
Yeah, that's a very...
You can see from an early age.
very early on thinking about your career choices. So
right. So this weird hair thing going on here. So I decided to major in engineering. I went with mechanical. And when I graduated, my first job was this little small aeronautical company south of Houston, and I kept applying to NASA. And I got a job as a flight controller with a contractor called United Space Alliance. And it was with I got a job in mission control, working as a flight controller for the space shuttle, the electrical power systems. And that was amazing, to be pretty much right out of college and working in mission control. And I worked every flight from 114 through 135, not 125, because they actually sent me out to the Cape to watch that launch. And that was kind of that's actually 125 right there. I was there for the launch. I'm in the LCC at KSC. And so it was amazing. I worked as an entry for 131, 132, 133, and 135. So I closed out the end of the shuttle program. Our log books at the end of every mission, we take logs during the entire flight. And so I got to sign my name, at the end of STS 135 when we landed. And so after the shuttle program, I got a job with the space station program, being a flight controller with OSO. And so I did that for about a year. And that was fun, but I was a contractor, like I said. And so they started having more layoff rumors, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this again. So I actually left NASA for about 3 years. And then after 3 years, I started to feel a little homesick. So started applying again. And I got another job, this time with NASA itself. And so now I'm working on the Orion program on the ECLA systems in safety. So I'm in safety and mission assurance as a vehicle systems engineer on the ECLIS systems, environmental control and life support systems for the Orion.
That is quite a lot to go over with, and I kind of
I mean, I started in 2004, and then I left in 2012 and came back in 2015. So, a total with NASA about 11 years.
Whew. So, just want to sort of go back a little bit to when you were younger, because when you sent over the photos for our interview, there were a lot of photos of you at space camp.
I went to space camp when I was in high school, and then I worked at space camp. That's when I was working at space camp. I worked there as a museum guide over 2 summers. For 2 summers, I actually interned with Marshall Space Flight Center. And so I interned there during the week, and then I just wanted to work at space camp. And so on the weekends, I was a museum guide. So I worked there as well.
Yeah, and what was that space camp experience like for you? What did that like sort of set you on the path of what you wanted to do? Did it clarify where you wanted to go?
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons my parents sent me or let me go, because I was begging them to go, and because I was at that point in time, I know this is going to sound weird, but I was kind of I kind of wanted to do this like international business thing, because I have this. Also this kind of fascination with like the French language and culture, because my family is I'm from South Louisiana, and we're, Cajun culture, and my family grew up speaking French. And so I kind of wanted to pursue that. And so do this like international business thing with French. And so I really loved that. And then I also really loved the science, the astronaut, the NASA engineering thing. And so, they were like, well, go to space camp and see if you really enjoy this, and maybe that'll help you decide. And so they sent me to space camp, and that was like it. I'm doing this.
By the way, this photo that we have up on the screen right now, could you tell us a little bit about it? Because when I saw this, I was like, there it is. That's like the dream realized right there.
Yeah. So on the left is me when I was in high school at space camp. I was that's me sitting in the commander's seat. And then on the right is when one of our trips to the Cape, I believe to C-120, STS-125 liftoff. That's me in the bunny suit. And I'm sitting in the commander's chair of, I think it may have been, it's either Discovery or Endeavour. I don't remember.
Yeah, either of those, because Atlantis was flying 125. So
right. I know it's like
it's a difference. Donna could probably figure out which one it is by looking at the right.
Yeah,
book,
and then it's not the backup shuttle that was going to be STS-400. So
gotcha. So
it's that one.
So after space camp and after high school, obviously you went to college, and what was that like at that time? Kind of going through those programs.
So I started out at a small college in North Louisiana that didn't have engineering. They only had pre-engineering. And I did that because they had this NASA scholarship that was called JOVE, JOVE. So it was joint venture with NASA. And while you went to school there, if you were on that scholarship, you got to do it's this partnership with NASA where you got to do some NASA research. And so I thought, well, I could do this pre-engineering and then get this research in, and then just transfer to a different school, afterwards, and then just finish up my engineering degree. And so that's what I did. So then I just transferred down to another school later and finished up my engineering degree. And I was actually one of only 2 women in my class who graduated in mechanical engineering.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of one of the things that's sort of a big challenge in the STEM fields right now. It's getting women into the STEM fields and getting them to go through and complete as well. And what do you feel like are some of the challenges that are behind that? And yeah, sort of if you could speak to that.
Yeah, that's something I've actually looked into a lot. So when I graduated in the early 2000s, women were about 20% of engineering graduates. That number has not changed since I graduated. And in my research, there's been extensive studies done and a lot of research into this. And basically, it comes down to the very subtle messaging by teachers, by classmates, and by parents that start in about middle school. Because when the kids are in about elementary school, it's very equal. The scores on tests and the confidence in the girls that they think that, they're interested in science and math, and their confidence level is very high. It's when they get to like junior high, high school, these subtle messages from society in general, I guess, and their teachers and parents and things, it starts to tell them that they're not as good as the boys. Math and science is for boys. It starts, things like toys that are marketed towards young men or boys in general versus toys that are marketed towards girls. And it's just in the classroom, the messages that the teachers send out, and they don't mean to. It's not something that they really think about, but it's these messages that the girls get over time that just kind of tell them math isn't for you, science isn't for you, or if a boy does not do as well on a test, they get the message, oh, well, that's okay, you'll do well next time. Whereas if a girl gets a maybe not so great grade on a test, it's, well, that's okay, maybe this subject isn't for you anyway. And so that's the things that I think we need to start working on, not just maybe, having what we're doing now is just kind of sending, these booklets to school and, telling teachers just, hey, just tell these girls that, STEM is for them. It's work on these finer, messaging points that, these subtle messages that we're sending these girls every day, work on that too, and then also tell them that, you can do these careers. And then also, have women who are engineers and people of color who are engineers to go out to these schools. Cause maybe engineers aren't the best communicators, and a lot of engineers don't really like to communicate, but the ones that do like it and the ones that are good at it, I think we need to have better training for them and opportunities for them to go out to schools and to go to these places where the kids are and talk to them and really reach out and show them, look, I look like you look like me, I'm doing this, you can do this too. So it is possible.
Yeah, and just to we have a comment from Carrie Ann in our chat room, which is in all caps, and I think you get the point of that, which is that all the women in the studio are shaking their heads in agreement, and I have to agree with that too, because I've been witness to that in engineering programs in my own college, and usually try to go up to people after the class and tell them to not listen to that kind of discouragement. So. It's very difficult to nail that down. As individuals, what are some of the things that individuals can do to kind of help try to bring more women into STEM?
Just encourage them, just if you're just in a position where if you're just in a position and the topic comes up, just tell them, hey, this isn't something that, show them an example of a woman, who's done something great, show them their Twitter feed, show them or someone, show them, hey, I know this girl and look, she did this or she did that. If a girl, if you have someone in your family, or a friend and they don't, maybe they don't even know that that's available to them. Maybe their family isn't encouraging them, then yeah, just, show them, there's tons of, like on Twitter, there's tons of we call it space Twitter, but there's lots of women in space Twitter, and you can, show them their Twitter accounts, and they're doing all kinds of wonderful things, and they have pictures of themselves just doing all kinds of things. So, just showing them, finding a woman who looks like them, doing cool things, say, look at this girl, look what she's doing. You can do that. There's no reason that you can't do that. And so finding examples of other women who were doing those things, it proves that, whoever's telling them that they can't do it is wrong.
Yeah, and to kind of go to our chat room a little bit, because we have a couple people who are actually like sharing their stories about women that they know. Davey says that my niece got her degree in computer science, even though she was told not to, and even though she's dyslexic. If anyone can do it, anyone can. Yeah, and then BC in our chat room.
Congratulations.
It's a big shout out to you, Davey, and your niece. BC said, no one supported my wife until she had the courage to move away from home. I pushed her because she's amazing. Now she's going to med school. So BC, woohoo!
That's awesome, BC. Thank you.
And then Citizen 59371 points out, which is very important to spaceflight history, which is that women got us into orbit and to the moon anyway.
To the moon.
Yeah.
That's right.
So very important. Can't forget that aspect of it as well. So want to sort of shift gears a little bit here to kind of talk about going into NASA and what that was like to work on the shuttle program, because for me and Dutta, shuttle is like the holy grail.
Yes,
if
it
we
is.
will.
It is absolutely
it's like
for
the Ark
me. It's my baby.
Yeah, it's like the Ark of the Covenant. We really like it, but also don't open it up because bad things. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about shuttle. What was your experience like working on the shuttle program?
Shuttle program was amazing. People can say what they want about it, and yes, it did have its flaws. It wasn't perfect, and but whatever. We'll move away from that. But it was such an amazing vehicle. I think the fact that it was my first vehicle always, that's going to play a fact into my, my love of it. But shuttle was just amazing because it could just do so many things. It had so let me go into what my job was on shuttle. First of all, I was the Eagle flight controller. So that's electrical generation and illumination, EGIL. So we were responsible for the electrical power systems of the shuttle, and the illumination part is the lighting systems. So they just needed a cool acronym, I guess. I know, illumination, right?
Yeah, it's the engineering, so it's the way it goes. So.
Yeah, right. So that's the fuel cells, the electrical generation part. So the fuel cells, there was two parts of that. There was the electrical part, the actual, the wires and the AC, DC electrical part of it. And then there was the PRSD, or power reactant storage and distribution part of it, which was the fuel cell part, and then the cryogenic storage part of it, and then distribution. So the cryogenic part of it was hydrogen and oxygen. And there was 5 tanks of each in the, not just under the payload bay liner. And the hydrogen and oxygen would go into the fuel cell. And they would combine along with with KOH, or potassium hydroxide. That chemical reaction would cause an output of water, power, and heat. So the heat would go, into the shuttle cooling loops and then be radiated out into space. The water was pure water. So the astronauts would drink that. And then the power would obviously go to power up every system on the orbiter. And so that's how the shuttle was powered. And the cryo was like gas. So once you ran out of cryo, that's when you had to come home. And so the amount of cryo combined with how much power we used determined the length of our missions. So it's, think about it, like gas in your car, how far you drive combined with how efficiently you use your gas mileage. That's how long you can go before you have to tank up again. So if we powered everything down, think like in Apollo 13, they were able to stay up in space longer. But if we just turned everything on and just, blew through it and didn't care, well, then we were going to have to come home sooner.
So with the shuttle and your time on the shuttle program, are there any interesting stories that you can tell us? At least that you can talk about on air publicly.
So my first certified flight was STS-117. and we were docked to station, and I came in, and we do handover. So we work 9-hour shifts, and our first shift, we take handover from the previous team. So we read the logs and we read the handover form, and we basically talk to the flight controller who was on the previous shift, and we ask any questions that we have, and we just see what happened. And on that shift, the Russian computers on station had failed, and those computers controlled the navigation for the station. So since we were docked, what they wanted us to do was we were going to have to use the shuttle to control navigation while those computers were down, and we were going to have to troubleshoot the problem. But they wanted to do it while shuttle was docked because we had the ability to control the navigation. So it was basically like, look, we need to fix this while we're docked, because if we don't, we're going to have to abandon and deorbit the space station. And this is my first certified flight. And so I'm like, okay. Well, I don't remember simming this, but okay. So we took over, me and the front room person, because for every person in the front room of mission control that you see, they have at least one person in the back, so anywhere from like 1 to 4. And so we take over, and like, what do you want me to do? So we just started working. Basically, we got the direction to just power everything down, so that we could stay in space longer, so that we could have as much time to troubleshoot that as we needed, if we needed to. And so I just started going around to, we had power downs on the books, but we wanted, this was going to go farther than any of those went. So I just I took my headset off, and I just physically walked to each console in the back room. And I just said, give me what you got. What don't you need? What can we turn off? And let's talk about it. And so I got a list, and I went, back, and I talked to my front room, and he talked to his counterparts in the front room, and we put together something, and we put it together, and we waited for the next team to come on so that they could look at it. And then, they looked at it, and then the next team came on, because we wanted everybody to look at it and to make sure that everybody was on board. We didn't want to put it in place, and then, the next team come on, and then one of their other operators had a problem with it. So everyone looked at it, and we put it together, and everyone agreed. And then we did what we could to power down.
Wow, that's a lot of work on your first mission as well. We've got a couple of interesting questions from our chat room. I want to take one from Dada, which is, when you first started working on shuttle, was there a crash course to come up to speed? They sort of have like Shuttle 101,
We had a training academy that was about 3 months. That's just to get you familiar with all of the systems of shuttle and all of the systems of space station. But it takes about 5 years to get completely certified. So from back room to all the way to front room. To get your first cert takes about a year, depending on if there's anyone in the flow before you. And so I think I had like 2 people before me, so it took a little bit longer. But no, other than training academy, there's no crash course. They want you to take as long as you need, but within reason, because they don't want you to cram. So it takes a while.
Yeah, I would imagine flying a crewed vehicle, they kind of want you to take your time so you understand everything.
Yes, they want you to be ready.
Yes, that's the best way to go about it. So you left NASA for a little bit, but then you came back to work on Orion. Can you tell us a little bit about your work on Orion?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm safety and mission assurance. And what we do now is we don't do any of the design work. Other people do that, but we review a lot of the parts of the design. So we'll have meetings, and people will show us things, and we'll kind of look out for like all the different pieces parts. But like, well, did you think about what if this valve, what if it breaks? What if this happens and then this valve does this, or this seal does that, or this, if this seal doesn't work, do you have a backup seal? Or, how many failures can you have before, or does it meet this requirement? If it has to you have to be able to have at least one failure and still be okay. Does this design meet that requirement? So we're kind of the negative Nancy's. The engineers want to think, oh, my design's great. What are you talking about? It's perfect. And it's like, well, it is if it doesn't have to go in space. But, so we're kind of pointing out all of the things that everyone else misses, because it's like, no, we have these requirements. Something has to be able to fail. And then the astronauts have to still be able to come back home. So that's what we do is make sure that the vehicle is safe enough to have humans in it, at least for EM2, and then and safely come home.
So Holly, we have a question from our chat room from Astro YYZ, which is asking, are there similarities between working on the shuttle program and work on Orion? And I think you would be particularly well suited for answering that.
There are. Yes and no. So you have to realize I did two very different jobs on shuttle and what I'm doing now on Orion. Before I was operations, and now I'm safety and more kind of designish. But the lessons that you learned from working on shuttle in terms of safety and the things that are always in the back of your mind in terms of keeping the crew safe and keep wanting the vehicle to be safe. Those lessons are always the same. You want the vehicle to be safe. You want to operate in a safe environment. You want the crew to be safe. You want the redundancy. You want, all of those things to remain the same. Because part of our training whenever we were shuttle flight controllers, because I came in 2004, so that was 1 year after the Columbia disaster. So part of our training was to read the CABE. So a lot of what's in the CABE does apply now to what we're doing in terms of safety and in terms of, what is a hazard, what is a risk, how much risk are we willing to accept? So yes, a lot of that does play into it.
Yeah, and just to kind of clarify for viewers, CABE, is that the Columbia Accident Investigation?
The Columbia Accident Investigation Board. It was the report, the accident report that was generated after the accident.
Gotcha.
The investigative report.
Excellent, thank you. And we've got another comment from YouTube from Travis Neal, which is asking you if you've ever been interested in pursuing the private space industry, programs like Blue Origin and SpaceX with that there, because you left NASA for a little bit and then he came back to NASA.
I did.
So kind of how do you feel about sort of private space?
I think private space is great. I think the more space, the better, right? The more access to space, the better. I wouldn't be opposed to private space. I do feel like it's more stable at NASA, just a government job overall. I feel like it's more stable. But no, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I haven't thought about it, especially since I came back to NASA. But if something did happen with Orion, or if I did lose my current job for some reason, yeah, I would definitely be open to looking at Boeing or SpaceX or something like that.
Yeah, and also from our chat room, Citizen59371 is asking if engineers are trying to find ways to make onboard spacecraft systems less complicated, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if going in, that's a goal. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to explain. They're just trying to they're just trying to find what's the best way, if that makes sense. If it's less complicated, then great. But if, it's also what's the safest, what's the best. It's the whole lot of things come into play. You're going to look at materials because a lot of it is requirements, so the spacecraft has to be able to operate in an environment, that's certain pressure, certain temperatures, certain vibrations, certain you have all these things that the spacecraft has to be able to do. It has to perform in a certain way. And so the systems have to be able to perform in a certain way. And so it's not necessarily that we try to go out of our way to make it complicated. It's just that sometimes in order to meet those requirements, that's what ends up happening. And so it's
tough.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
So we do if we can find a way to do things easier, but those requirements are still met, then we'll do it that way. But if we can't find a way to do that, then we still have to keep it complicated. Kind of
reminds me of Richard Feynman talking about quantum mechanics being interviewed, and the interviewer asks him, you had to build the most complicated scaffolding anyone ever has in order to explain the universe. And then Richard Feynman goes, no, it's not complicated. There's just a lot of it. So
right, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit about you yourself, because not only are you like an incredible asset to NASA and women in STEM, but you are also like and I say this as a compliment, you are a absolute nerd, I guess is how I would put it, because I mean I am too about things. So so tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you do. Like we've got a photo of you here with Dr. Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, hanging out. So
he's my hero.
And we've also got a few more as well. Some people who have visited you at NASA as well during your work, which has been very interesting. Here we go. This is a great one here. Young you wearing that. So
that's Leia from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. And then speaking of Leia, I saw that photo. Dada, if you want to bring it up. Real quick here. Here's our next one. So
everyone gets on me because it's like the only Halloween costume I have. So every year I'm Leia.
Well, I think it works. I mean, so I take it you really like Star Wars.
I'm in my Star Wars room right now. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, we kind of noticed with all of the posters. There's even a porg behind you as well. The
porg,
there. Yeah. So what is it about Star Wars that you like so much?
Well, Leia was a character that had never been. She was such a strong female character that had never been like before. There was never a character like her who was such a strong female character. She was just so different from every other character that had ever come before her. I mean, she was literally the only woman in the room, but she was like the only woman on the planet, or the space station, whatever you want to call it. And these guys come in and they're like, we're going to rescue you. And she's like, well, you came in here, you'd have any plan for getting out. Oh, screw it, and she takes the gun and she's just like, all right, this is what we're doing from now on.
Into the garbage chute.
And if you think about it, like
right? So
everybody she meets Vader, the first, thing she tells him is like, the Senate's not going to take your stuff. And then she meets Tarkin and she's like, you smell bad. And then she meets Luke and she's like, aren't you short? And then she meets Han and she's like, you got in here, but you have no plan for getting out. So she like insults everyone she meets the first time she meets them. She just takes nothing, she just does her own thing. And she was just so strong-willed and such a great role model, I thought. And she was just kind of growing up that she was who, whenever I saw her as a little girl, I was like since I saw her from such a young age, she kind of showed me, oh, well, that's what women can do. And from then on, anytime anyone else said, no, you can't do that, I was like, well, but Leia could do it. Because when I was 4 years old, my grandfather told me, well, I was like, I'm going to be an astronaut. And he's like, well, no, you're a woman. You have to be a nurse or a teacher. Not that there's anything wrong with that. My husband's a teacher. But I was like, well, no, Leia, but have you seen Star Wars? No, that's not right. And so, so she was just like such an inspiration to me and showing me what a woman could do. And being there's so few women in engineering. It's, her story, since she's always the only woman around all the guys, and she still took charge and did her own thing. It was just really inspirational. And so I credit her to, I give her a lot of credit for where I am today.
And in our previous episode, we actually had a discussion about whether science fiction influences a lot of people greatly to actually get into the STEM fields. Do you kind of feel like it's maybe not
Absolutely.
just in your case, but it is? Oh, absolutely. So.
Oh yeah, I give talks on that. I've given talks on that at Star Wars Celebration, a couple of Star Wars celebrations actually, and other cons, around the country. And I also talked about it at the Smithsonian last year. They invited me at the Air and Space Museum. They invited me to speak at the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. And I kind of talked about that too. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and then we have so many, and I say this lovingly because I consider myself a nerd or geek or whichever one you want to call it. So many Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, all of, Harry Potter, all of it at NASA, everyone in some way is, whatever, pick your fandom, is a nerd.
Yeah, exactly. So Holly, we're going to wrap up our interview, but before we officially end it, we do ask all of our guests 4 questions. These are sort of like wrap-up questions. With these questions, there are no wrong answers. They are simply the answers that you give us. So you ready to go for them?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your favorite space mission, past, present, or future?
I can't, shuttle missions. Oh my gosh. I just love them all. My favorite one to work though was probably, probably 131, SCS-131, just because it was my first ascent entry. And so the adrenaline that first ascent was just so exciting. So probably that one.
Excellent.
SCS-131.
Yeah. All right. Our second question, human or robot exploration of the cosmos?
You can't compare the two, both. They do different things. It's apples or oranges.
All right. And our third one, where should we go next?
Human or robot?
Either or both. You tell me both.
Humans. Oh gosh, I'm gonna get so much flack for this, but I say moon. I say this for practical reasons. I am not anti-Mars. I just feel like technically, I'm not going to say we're not there yet, but I think we could learn a lot more and get better at a lot of things by going back to the moon first. So that when we do go to Mars, it would be much easier. Biologically, I think there's a lot of problems we haven't solved yet, like the radiation problem. And so I think we need to wait a little bit longer until either some technologies get better or we decide on maybe different means of propulsion so I just think we need some time before we decide to go to Mars. But I am pro Mars and I do want to go there. I just think going to the moon first could help us just get some roadblocks out of the way. Robotically, Europa, man, we need Europa, about that.
Figure out what's under that ice. So
yeah.
So our final question, this is my favorite question to ask anybody.
Okay.
Why space?
Why not? So gosh, there's so many different answers you could give to this. I'll give, depends on who you're talking to. Because there's many different answers to this question. And when I do give talks and people ask me this, I try to gauge where they're coming from. But so imagine if we had not landed on the moon, what would we be like today? Where would we be at in terms of technology? Would we have things like iPhones? Would we have, so much technology came from just going to the moon. Personally, I don't like that answer. Don't get me wrong. I like my iPhone and we probably would have gotten there eventually, but to some people that's enough for them and they're happy and they'll walk away with that. I think as humans, we explore and we want to know. And I think that exploring just for the sake of knowing and just for the sake of knowledge and just for the sake of exploring, for me, that's enough. I want to know what's out there. I want to learn. I want to learn about where, how our planets formed, how our solar system formed. I want to learn, is there life on other planets? What, obviously, I don't think we're going to, have something like Kepler and find intelligent life on some other planet. I don't think that's how it's going to work. But could we find, unintelligent life? That would be an amazing discovery. Just knowing that is an amazing discovery, and would be mind blowing to me. So just doing it for the sake of knowledge, for me, that's what gets me up in the morning. I love it. I just love it to learn.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Holly. And if folks would like to learn more about you, where should they go?
They can follow me on Twitter. It's absolute, like the vodka, space, GRL. And those are for Twitter reasons. I can only have like 15 characters. So yeah. So it's absolute, no E, space, GRL, absolute space girl.
All right. Well, Holly Griffith, thank you so much for coming on tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And we're going to go ahead and go to our break. And after that break, your comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. There's more tomorrow in just a little bit.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart. Brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn, and we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the third segment. I am still Carrie Ann, and I want to make sure I give another thank you to our patrons. These are the Escape Velocity people. They, of course, get their name in their show again, and you're right, Jared. They get their name in the show more than anybody else.
That's right.
Isn't that awesome? We also have our Orbital Citizens, and they also get their name in the show for a second time. And then we have our Suborbital Citizens. Now, these citizens you've not heard about yet today, so we are going to tell you a little bit about them. They have contributed $2.50 per episode on Patreon or $5 a month on makersupport.com. They, of course, get their name in the show, just like we do. They get early access to After Dark, early access to some view-only copy of the show rundown so you can see all the things we're about to talk about and more sometimes. And they get a few other things, but again, we have talked about this a lot. So if you are interested in getting your name in the show and contributing to tomorrow and becoming a citizen, you can head on over to patreon.com/TMRO or makersupport.com/TMRO. Lost Mike there for a second, so I had to stretch. I apologize. In any case, here we are. I know,
Here we
right?
go.
Oh my goodness gracious! What was I saying? I wasn't here last week. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm a little bit off of my things.
You're good. Take your time.
So last week we were talking with these people. You did this interview, Jared. Is that correct?
Perfect. The Space Nation.
Thank you. And who were we talking with?
We were talking to Kale Vahayakola.
I'm so glad I made you do that because I looked at that slate and went, I don't know what I'm doing
Kale
here.
Vahayakola.
And Kale, that was a fun interview.
Yeah, it really was. And I'm going to get that app as soon as it's on iOS.
Fantastic poster.
Some good stuff.
So I can't tell if you guys actually really, really enjoyed this one or really, really hated it because there were like no comments anywhere. So I guess everything that had to have been said about it was said in the interview, which, I mean, it was a good interview. So
yeah,
good to know about that.
There you go.
In any case, one of our first comments, all of these comments came off of YouTube because that's the only place anybody commented on this one, which is totally fine because that was cool. The first comment comes again off of YouTube from Sibidoy19.
Cibendo 19.
Sure, we're gonna go with that. It says, love the new rocket designs. If BFR, being Big Falcon Rocket, is successful, I hope the rest of the industry emulates SpaceX's design. This is an exciting time to be alive. I like this comment because I was like, yes, it is an exciting time to be alive, but if all the rockets look the same, then we couldn't debate on which of your shuttle is your favorite shuttle. Because for those of you very, very, very long-time viewers, that's a little bit of an inside joke, so I will explain. I famously have said that all of the shuttles look alike, and I got so much flack for that. It was absolutely amazing.
Incorrect.
Absolutely amazing. And 10 years in, I'm going to stick to that, but just mostly because I can. But it does point towards that idea that I wanted to say specifically is that if all of the other rocket providers built the same kind of rocket or similar looking rocket, it just wouldn't be interesting, man.
Variety is the spice of life.
Right?
Right? So why can't it be the same for vehicles that ride on combustion?
Right. Well, I mean, they're doing different things. They're going different places. You don't want them to be identical because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You're not all going to the same place.
Yeah, like it makes no sense to send a rocket using kerosene and liquid oxygen to Mars because you've got like your carbon dioxide and the other stuff there that you can make methane out of. So
actually, speaking
like
of methane, going a little bit back to not your anus per se, but Uranus.
Yes.
Uranasa.
Uranus.
Uranus. But there's the
There you
two
go.
U's. I'm going to
Nice.
get there. It's fine. Raj Luthra in our YouTube channel asked much earlier in the show, can Uranus, how do you say it?
Uranus.
Uranus. Can Uranus be used for fuel or to fuel spaceships?
Ooh, on that one, I'm going to have to ask Jared.
All right, just want to make sure.
because
I wanted to give you
rocket
credit
fuel-
where credit was due on that
Totally.
one.
Rocket fuel is not my thing.
that would be very, very difficult to do. You've literally got to I don't know what level the methane is at there. I would imagine that it's probably not on the wisps of the
It's in the
atmosphere.
0.1 parts per million.
Yeah. So
Low down in the
you
atmosphere.
could dip into the atmosphere and have a scoop. This is something that's actually been talked about, actual future spacecraft
Like
using.
pea soup?
Yeah, a scoop.
No, I understand
But,
the concept, sure, clam chowder, but literally scoop it out of the
You're flying.
atmosphere?
You kind of fly. You dip a little bit into the atmosphere, and as you do, the atmospheric pressure increases because there's more particles of atmosphere,
Right.
And you end up getting them to go down the scoop, and you hold them in a tank, and you pressurize the tank so you can stuff more and more atmosphere in it. You basically, it's kind of like. Gosh, this is really tough.
No, I mean I believe you.
Almost like air breathing engines or jet engines or something
Yes.
like that. How
Okay,
they
okay.
pull their fuel from the atmosphere. In the similar way, we would pull fuel from the atmosphere, but we'd have to convert it. We wouldn't be burning it instantaneously. We would have to convert it first. And with the amounts that we're talking about on Uranus or Uranus, that would be a lot of atmospheric scooping to try to get something
Yes.
usable.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so not necessarily. I mean, we like the idea, but not necessarily. That's what we're saying?
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of filtering
Okay,
to get down to the actual combustible material.
that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, good question. And we all learned something today.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking with pea soup, so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. And I think what you could do too, to prevent yourself from losing altitude, you could put some sort of electric propulsion engine on the backs that could give you an equivalent thrust.
Sure.
Because I know I can't recall the name. GOCE, GOCE. I can't recall what the acronym stands for. It was a European Space Agency mission that had a spacecraft that was designed to fly basically through the upper atmosphere of the Earth to measure the Earth's gravitational distribution so that you could get really good maps of things like that. It had a little ion engine to push at a constant acceleration so that it could stay at an ultra low altitude in order to do that. It was literally 120 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you could do something like that. You don't necessarily have to lose your orbit around that if you're willing to do that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Instead of having to fuel midair.
Well, just instead of losing, because if you're going through the atmosphere, you're generating drag, so you're losing velocity or
okay,
losing energy, which lowers your velocity. You could then, you could have a little bit of thrust that prevents you from losing that energy. So, yeah.
All right.
Now, isn't it Neptune that has a lot of hydrogen? Wouldn't that be a smarter place to try to do something like this? Or
I don't think so. I think Neptune's also like Uranus, which is an ice giant.
Yeah.
So
It color-wise, the blue is created by methane, but so you're not really working with as much hydrogen as you would have, say, at Saturn or Jupiter.
Okay.
yeah, the problem at Saturn and Jupiter though is the gravity well.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yowza. So,
Right.
yeah.
Let's just bring the fuel with us.
Noted. All right. Next comment comes again off of YouTube. This one comes from Chad Snow. It says, Space Mike, on the test mission, was that the same landing legs? What was the sideways flame after the landing, and why did SpaceX build another Block 4? I apologize. This was a lot thrown at you all at the same time.
oh, you know nothing, Chad Snow.
Oh, sad.
I'm just kidding. Actually, with this one, those landing legs, as far as I know, are the same type that SpaceX has been using ever since they had an upgraded version of it. Those are the first landing legs on that particular core. And why they needed another Block 4 for the test mission, I don't know, but that was the last Block 4 Falcon 9 core that SpaceX has built. So hopefully the last one that we'll see, and we'll start seeing the Block 5 launches really soon. It is going to be reused for one more mission since it landed. It's been assigned to the CRS-15, I believe. Could be 16, because, yeah, we already had the 15 mission, right? No. Yeah, for the upcoming CRS-15 is what that one's going to be assigned to. So, as for the sideways flame, I'm not sure about that either. But I believe that was just the direction that went as they were doing the shutdown. Unless you're talking about how the flame can go sideways as it's coming in for a landing, and that's just helping its direction so that it doesn't tip over. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Cool.
I'm sure if it doesn't, someone will let us know.
Yes.
Thank you, Space Mike, for that. Next comment comes from Kevin F. Says, you should change your time from UTC to MTC, Coordinated Martian Time.
Ooh, that would be very, very tough. Actually, I just want to point this out. The current time in UTC is 1935, and the current time in Coordinated Mars time is 2105. So we're actually not that far off. But, of course, Mars, its rotation is about 40 minutes longer than the Earth's is.
Right.
So that changes every single day.
Every single Earth day.
Yeah, every single Earth day.
Yeah.
As opposed to every single Martian day.
There you go.
Yeah, so.
That's what I'm
Every
saying.
single show would be at a different time.
Right. Look, man, it's already hard enough to tell people what time we are on. Like, the last thing we need to be is like, well, depends on the date. Like, this date's going to be, right? Could you imagine, like, I already have only the one watch, but I know a lot of the astronauts at the International Space Station have two. My understanding is that it's Coordinated Universal Time and then Houston local time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would imagine that would probably be it. So.
Yeah, perfect. I know. I'm looking at planetary people.
I know
like they're going to tell me.
I know the engineers at JPL, they have the Mars watches, right?
Yeah.
For landing, initially after landing.
Yeah,
So.
And a lot of the controllers who are in SFOF, or Space Flight Operations Facility, running Curiosity, they are on
They're living
Mars
on Martian
shift.
time, right?
Yeah. So that gets a little tough.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
Like, it sounds cool to like, I'm going to work 40 minutes
time.
later.
It does.
I get to sleep in, a half hour every day. And then you're like, now I'm going into work at 3:40 a.m.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's sleep shifting.
Yeah, and I think there's been studies done to see how humans react to that, and it's like universally negative.
Yes.
Like night owls and early risers, it's just like, to how that works.
Yeah, don't mess with our sidereal time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we just abolish daylight
Circadian
saving
rhythms.
time altogether? Can we just start there,
Arizona
please?
did.
Yeah, I know, Arizona. The hologram
Only
always
thing
likes
we've
to
done
tout that one. Like, I live in any time I want. Neat. Yes, and we're all jealous. All right, next comment comes off of YouTube from Kurtz Mays. Says, I'm mistaking the thought lunation meant vertical Libration?
Libration.
Libration?
Yeah, you got
but
it.
it is a period of time from one new moon to the next, so not relevant.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
I mean, right, I appreciate that too. Actually, I had to read this comment a couple of times. I was like, wait, what are we talking about? And then I kind of had to go back and, oh yes, okay, that was the reference. All right, now I understand. And I mean, it is sure not relevant in that way if that's what you thought the definition was, and the definition is actually different. But I learned a new definition, so I thought that was, and we changed cameras. So I thought that was good. And then the last, unless somebody else has anything else to say,
No.
Mike.
See you on the next lunation.
Aha, there you go. The last comment for the show is from one Brandon Byers. Says Omega with a capital A. She reminds me of SpaceX. Sincerest form of flattery, right? So this rocket will be derived from shuttle components. Does that mean it will take orbital ATK 10? Nope, 16 years to build it. Seems that that's what the cool kids are doing these days. I'm looking at you, Aries. I mean SLS.
Ouch! Wow.
That was a little bit of a burn. Yeah.
I need some aloe vera after that one.
Well, considering Aries 1 was the only thing that was actually built and test flown during the Constellation program, that says a lot about this particular rocket.
But was that even like an Aries 1?
Not really. I mean, it was really just the 5-segmented solid booster. It had like a dummy upper stage.
Yeah.
However, they in their like most latest like announcement video for this, they've shown different pieces of hardware that they've already built for this. I mean, it's a shorter stack than it is. It's different. Like they're going to use like a 2-segment version essentially of the solid rocket booster, and that's already been built. They've already built that version. I don't know where they are as far as qualification testings, because they have to test fire those rocket motors. But a lot of the other pieces of this rocket have already been tested. The solid rocket boosters for this, those have already been tested. The engine that they're going to be using for the upper stage is very well tested, although how they're going to do the tankage for that is something I want to know about, and who's going to build that. Because otherwise, if they're building the tankage themselves, they can call it whatever they want. Otherwise, it's a Centaur upper stage, essentially.
Yes.
But they're pretty far along on this, actually, and
That's
they're
cool.
hoping to secure funding from the Air Force to add this rocket to the EELV, the Expendable Evolved Launch Program, launch vehicle program, to start launching national security payloads like within the next 2 to 3 years. So they might be a lot farther along on this than you think.
Interesting. All right.
Neat.
Very cool. Yeah?
That's pretty neat.
Pretty neat.
I also want to make sure I give a thank you to even more citizens of tomorrow.
Wow.
These are the ground support crew. And please understand that while you might have your name only in the show, only once as it were, these people have definitely contributed to the progress of tomorrow. These people have contributed $1 per episode on Patreon or $1 per month on makersupport.com. They, of course, get their name in the show as a thank you. They get access to our exclusive citizen-only hangouts and early access to After Dark as soon as it's available on demand. Again, as a thank you. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate every part of it. And so there you go. Next week, we have on Frank Bunger, who's the CEO of a luxury space hotel company, Orion Span.
Yes.
And we will also be having a Tomorrow Science episode, which is very cool. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, please do. It is a lot of fun. It's a very similar format. We definitely have a lot of fun on there, and questions and comments about last week's show. And also in After Dark, we're going to get to know Sarah a little bit better. I know, I'm going to put you on the spot. It's going to be great, though. It's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for joining us. We will see you all next week.
Also, before we get restarted on the interview, Carrie Ann just pointed out that we're both wearing NASA shirts. My shirt has the meatball logo. Your shirt has the worm logo.
I noticed that too.
Which is your favorite logo?
I can't. It's like my children.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's the worm. So
The worm?
I think
Okay,
the
that's
worm is
fine.
the
I
best.
won't judge.
So, all right. So. Thank you, Holly. I appreciate it. Makes me feel so much better. All right, so here we go.